Good afternoon and welcome to today's sponsored content webinar with Magnifi. I'm Kara Dietzel, Vice President at NACDA, and we're glad to have you with us. Moderating today's session is Daniel Evans. Daniel has over 30 years experience in developing advanced technologies across multiple industries. A former developer, product manager, and founder, Daniel has been working on AI in media and sports for the last 7 years. His company, Really AI, was acquired in 2023 by Magnifi, where he now oversees the Americas market. Magnifi offers groundbreaking video analysis and editing technologies that transforms videos into social-ready content assets. It is a cloud-agnostic platform that uses AI and machine learning to analyze, tag, generate clips, and publish them in real time. Magnifi helps sports content owners such as broadcasters, leagues, colleges, and conferences create impactful, immersive stories across all media genres at speed and at scale. Magnifi will also be exhibiting at this year's NACDA Affiliates Convention in Las Vegas, so please be sure to visit with them there. Before we begin, a quick reminder for our live attendees to utilize the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit any questions throughout the discussion, as we have a lot of time at the end to answer them. An email will be sent out later today to all registered attendees with a link to today's recording. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Daniel.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you taking some time today. Hopefully you're grabbing some lunch or drinking your morning coffee. Rather than me kind of introduce everybody, I'm just going to kind of go around the horn and let everybody kind of introduce themselves, talk about what they're doing. We're really excited today to talk about something that those of you that know me, I'm really passionate about, and that is advanced technologies and what can we do to improve the fan experience. So we've kind of assembled a really great group of people coming from different perspectives in that space. So Marcia, how about starting with you, and then we'll go to Gregg, and then finish with Alex.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Marcia Caporn. I'm VP of Commercial for Aura. We've created a platform that kind of aggregates all the service providers for partners, and like Magnifi, the highlights, the stats, the ticketing, and puts it back into one ecosystem for our partners to allow them to use contextual AI engine to serve up experiences that mean the most in this new age of personalization and, regaining the relationship with the fan.
Amazing. Gregg.
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for having me. Thank you, the NACDA and Magnifi. So my name is Gregg Katano. I'm founder, CEO of Cosmos Collab, agency, consultancy, bringing together storytellers of Hollywood, emerging media and tech, and bringing it to all industries. And, sports is a really exciting area because of, of the fact that they seem to bring out emerging tech before a lot of other media and entertainment. So I'm also chair of the SVG Next Conversations, which is basically introducing new technologies and new media processes to the SVG membership. And lastly, I'm also on the executive committee for the Television Academy Emerging Media. So you could tell, a little bit of an early adopter, glutton for punishment, because we're usually waiting for things to develop. But I think I've always enjoyed trying to, rally a bunch of experts and, hopefully help to demystify a lot of these technologies so that, all the companies out there can incorporate that into their models. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Alex.
Hey, Alex Cramer, Associate AD for Marketing and Creative at the Air Force Academy. Wrapping up my 6th year at Air Force. For the purposes of this call, Marketing Creative at Air Force encompasses social media. So partner with Daniel and the guys at Magnifi to deliver content to our fans. As far as something we're working on right now, I think other than just the normal trying to figure out a way to sell more football tickets, is we've got a big capital project on the east side of our venue, the East Club, which we can get into a little more later. And that building is supposed to be commissioned and open early August ahead of football season. So I think that's probably the biggest thing on the docket for us right now.
Yeah, it's a great setup, right? So one of the things we all got together yesterday to kind of chat about what we wanted to talk about today. And for me, I'm always thinking web and software and apps and all of these things. And Alex kind of brought it back to like what's important to the schools and universities right now. And it's Wi-Fi, getting the right Wi-Fi connections and connectivity inside their facilities, building facilities, it's grab and go marketplaces for easy checkouts. It's scanning tickets. So let's talk to Gregg. How about we talk a little bit about some of the improvements in terms of Wi-Fi and what you're seeing in the market in terms of installs, and then we'll talk to Alex a little bit more about what they're doing at Air Force.
Sure. No, yeah, we brought that up yesterday that, as we're talking about all these emerging technologies, AI, virtual reality, augmented reality, incorporating that into the guest experience, at the stadiums. But we're talking about, more of the professional teams, so you think about all these technologies, but really Wi-Fi is probably the most important technology for these college stadiums. And, face it, you have maybe the most storied franchises that can afford, to build that Wi-Fi infrastructure. But what about all the smaller colleges, and what about the older, institutions, older stadiums? So to be able to incorporate Wi-Fi is going to enable just all these services that we sort of take for granted at, at a Dodgers game or at a football and an NFL game. And to hear what, my esteemed panelists, Alex and Marcia, include in their services, and how they use data, how they try to increase the guest experience, the guest engagement before, during, and after the game. I feel that Wi-Fi really ties that all together, and I'm sure that we're all going to be exploring that more.
Yeah. And so Alex, on, like obviously your facilities are, kind of top of the line or have access to more technology because just what you are, right? You're a government organization, right? So you have these things, but you still have challenges. Those things still need to be installed, right? So now that you have Wi-Fi systems, talk about some of the things that's enabling for you on-prem, at your event, pre-event, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, there might be a misconception there on just some of the resources we have available to us on the federal side. But the new build on the east side has provided an opportunity to modernize, that side of our venue. So a couple of the things we're doing there with that build out is it created a grand entrance there at the front where, working with our partners at PAC, we've got these pedestals that people will be able to, scan their tickets without having to have an individual, take their phone and scan their tickets, right? So trying to reduce some of our operational expenses there in a couple different areas, that being the first one, and hopefully improve our ingress times a little bit as folks are arriving at Falcon Stadium. So, and then once you come through that front door right there, on your left will be our first ever indoor climate controlled team shop at Falcon Stadium. And so one of the pieces of tech that we're leveraging there, again, try to make it a more frictionless experience, is self-checkout. So, before we've always had to have a bunch of cash registers manned. This will, as everybody does at the grocery store now, hopefully expedite that process as people are able to come in, find the merchandise that fits their needs, and then check it on their own time, and hopefully reduce those queue times there to get out of that room. Similar as you move through that concourse right there, because this is kind of our new area that has these capabilities, is just grab and go concessions, which isn't a new concept, but for us it is, with our new concession partners Levy here. So fans will be able to come grab their own concessions and, again, check themselves out on their own time. So just trying to reduce those wait times, get people back to the action faster, get them to their seats faster, so that they have a good experience, because we're competing with a pretty frictionless experience at people's homes. So yeah, those are just, I think, a few pieces that will hopefully, delight fans as we kind of turn the corner of this new chapter in our football stadium.
And do you see, one of the things that I've always, from a tech perspective, I've always said, ask for data when it's relevant, when I can deliver something back, right? So email address, offers you the ability to get access to these ticketing softwares, or to be able to do self-checkout. And if I'm going to do self-checkout, then I need a zip code to be able to match up to my card. So it's, I'm, instead of coming in and saying, hey, fan, give us all of this data, right? Just ask just-in-time questions where it's relevant to the consumer. So it allows them to add more information to our customer profiles, and all of the things that you're doing on-prem feed into how you engage your customers. And Marcia, you guys are working in that space to be able to aggregate that data together.
Yeah, and I just want to build off your last point is, I mean, our focus is all around utility. It's connecting them with the friends, allowing them to chat with friends, create meetups. And when you are asking for something, it's providing a service of get your tickets, see waiting times for toilets, see like pre-order merch, like really focused around both, the user experience and then basically like empowering the stadium to realize if you can put some of that tech into their hands and get them a part of the experience, that's the future. Like the younger generations share locations, they chat, they expect Uber, they expect food. And so rather than trying to reinvent things, just bringing it to them in, this event space that you own, you're going to naturally, organically not only have a better experience, but get the data that you can now monetize in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, and it's a good point. The younger generation, which I think is where everybody needs to target, especially in collegiate, right? Because you've got a lot of young adults that are coming up and they've grown up around content and make me look cool in the Instagram and TikTok and all of this stuff. And Gregg, you talked a little bit about like the AR installs to where you can take pictures with celebrities and athletes and stuff like that. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. And yeah, so I've been in the AR VR space since about 2013. So yeah, super early. It's been a long road, but it's great to finally see how we're able to bring the fan engagement or incorporate augmented reality into the fan engagement. And you're starting to see these kiosks that maybe were used for, map location and, what concessions are being offered. They're being repurposed so that now you can stand in front of it with the camera facing you. And then, in comes the athletes from your favorite team populating the screen. So it makes it look like they're actually hanging out with you taking a selfie. And I feel that that's really cool, especially when, to all of your points that, fans, especially the students, at a college game, they're grown up with mobile technology. So, and they're used to sharing. And so imagine if after they take this photo with the athletes, they're able to then, post it directly to the big screens, or to their social media. And I know it's a pro stadium, but the Intuit Stadium here in Los Angeles for the Clippers that's being built, I mean, every seat's going to have a charger, or it's going to have also power in general, so that now you can create these light experiences, where you typically would have those RFID bands, walking in. Well, now now it sounds like they're incorporating the lights right into the chairs. So I feel like that it just enhances that guest experience. And what you were saying earlier, Alex, about, there's a lot of competition, right? Where we're trying to figure out, how do we get people out of the home? How do we get these students, these fans out of the home for the stadium experience? And yeah, bring them, what they're familiar with. Bring them the interactivity with their mobile phones. And I remember, years ago when they talked about second screen, like, oh, well, we're going to be watching television and, and we're going to have a tablet in front of us and our phones. And, I thought people were crazy back then. I thought, wait a minute, now if I'm going to watch a show, I'm going to watch my show. I'm not going to be distracted with my mobile phone or my tablet. And I'm doing it. I'm now looking things up as I'm watching a show. So I feel like that experience is happening in the stadiums. We're watching the game, but we're looking up stats. We're looking at which players are maybe out for the day. But that is such a, the mobile experience is such an integral part. And then, so why not throw in augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and find ways to, enhance the experience either with the selfie or, as what Marcia, you were talking about, and Alex, is that use that data so that maybe we're directing people to other parts of the stadium. I know it's not augmented reality, but it's also about crowd control, crowd flow, and getting people back in their seats so that they can find the shortest concession line. Like all
Yeah.
of that is really being driven through our mobile devices, and which I think is really exciting.
That's interesting too, like Alex, because a lot of this stuff in terms of the new facilities and new builds, and you want to direct people into your store and get that going, and then to be able to, it's interesting if you kind of make your stadium an Easter egg hunt so that they get familiar with the stadium and where things are, to be able to put those experiences in different areas and be able to kind of move the traffic flow. In the games industry, we call it the invisible hand. Like, we want you to go here, but we don't want to put a big green arrow that says go here. And it's something that Collegiate can start to think about. I think Wi-Fi is super important to that. And then creating these interesting FOMO moments, right? Because why, for this younger generation, like I have a 21-year-old daughter, and getting her to go out of the house is a difficult thing. Getting her to watch a TV show is a difficult thing, right? So they have to have these things where they feel like if they're not at the event, they're missing out. And I think some of these AR experiences and embracing the fact that they are a content first generation and making that part of your facility, I think is a good way to make them want to come to the game versus just watching it, or even collecting short form or watching highlights, which, yes, we love that. But at the same time, we want to see the fans in the building. Alex, any thoughts on like what you guys are, when you start with this new facility, were you kind of mapping that out? Like what are the flows of, your fans?
Yeah, we have 10 gates to our stadium that were all kind of at different elevations, if you will, because everything's built right into the side of a mountain. So I mean, this opportunity with the build on that east side, which is, like I said, gonna be our grand entrance there, which is an opportunity to improve traffic patterns. I mean, I still think we're interested to see what happens in reality after game one. We have in our mind, I think, how everything will flow, where the lines will be, how we mitigate that. But at the end of the day, people are going to tell us with their feet exactly, where they want to spend their time. And I think there'll be some adjustments from game one to game two and throughout the season, trying to figure out how we make improvements. Because right now it's all theoretical, I think, with this new project. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. Marcia, any final thoughts? We'll wrap up this kind of in-stadium stuff.
Yeah, I would just say, I would stretch everybody to think even like a step outside of their stadium, especially around football, is don't forget you own all this real estate around the stadium where they meet for hours, and you have all this, all these activation and all this space and connectivity to your brand that you have to make sure you're thinking about it and have a strategy of how are you onboarding them to connect with you and your brand and each other. Because in like, as much as I love tech, and I'm also like, you need to make them, it's more about how do you make them show up in real life, not in tech. And if we don't lose sight of that, and it's just an aid to facilitate engagement rather than try to replace it, is like really key in thinking of just making everything easier rather than, replacing the game.
Yeah, I really do. I think it's it's not an area that probably gets a lot of attention because athletic departments are just not thinking that, but like these institutions should be thinking about what is the customer experience flow from out of the car into the gate? How am I making them connect to my brand? How am I getting them to share information? How am I getting them to have a good time? Because UGC is such a driver for fandom, and you want to be able to capture that audience. Getting them to share their moments and to feel the energy of the occasion is a big deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Double their time with you. You know what I mean? You have them in stadium, but like
Yeah.
you ask them for the tailgate, you get the brands, you get all of it tapped in. It's like, it's really good. I mean, and it's your data. They're on your campus. You should know what they're doing. So
Right.
Amazing. So
Right.
with that, we'll kind of wrap up in that section. Just a quick note too, if you have questions for the panel, please drop them into the Q&A. I am watching it. We've got one already, but I'll send it over to you, Alex, real quick, a hot topic, which is the ever-changing landscape of NIL and transfer portal in college sports. Just want to give your take on that, and then we'll move on to how we engage audiences.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. The letters NIL don't really exist at Air Force right now. So with our cadet athletes being federal employees, they're not allowed to endorse corporate entities. So we have not, for better or for worse, had to really delve into that, space with collectives and just all the navigation that's going on across the industry. Look, there's been a ton of stuff in the news recently with everything changing. I think we are in a position where we're a little more on the sidelines in that space, but changes here, and we're going to adapt as necessary to hopefully keep, bringing people out to sporting events, entertaining them, and developing student athletes.
Yeah, it's obviously on the top of everybody's mind. I remember being at NACDA last year, and I think 80% of the seminars and the talks were around NIL and community and how do we do all these things. Obviously, it's changing. There's some of these settlement discussions that are going on. So it's a lot. So like one of the things that we talked about as a group earlier was around how to engage content. And I think the NIL place that we kind of started was, well, a lot of the universities and specifically Stanford won't allow certain students to use a mark, and that's a kind of a big deal. And how that affects content, right? Being able to get access to content, letting students get access to content because there's these controls there. So let's talk a little bit about content and how content can be used to kind of grow your audience and grow your universities. Marcia, will you kick us off?
Yeah. So one space that's super exciting with all the AI film editing tools, obviously, is the ability to clip highlights and take your long form games and have a whole new bucket to monetize, because there's the whole next gen, like Gen Z, that don't watch long form and just watch highlights, which you can then put branding behind, you can monetize, you can use as a flywheel to get new followers. And so really making sure you have a team dedicated to basically creating stories around the game of data and interviewing athletes and then splicing in the highlights, and being able to do that at scale with AI tools now and search is just like a huge, you guys have this huge archive that you should just really make sure you keep visiting and realize there's so many stories there to bring to life. Especially at moments in time with big games or big rivalries, you have this history that you can just tap into and really take it to another level, and people that don't watch long form.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the archive, and Alex, we talked about it. One that I hadn't thought about where it was young alum and how to keep them engaged. But if you think about your archive and your content, one of the great ways to kind of connect with your audience is some of the older clips from the 60s and 70s for your maturing audience, right? Like the content from the 90s and the 2000s for kind of the Gen Xers, and because they're connected to those players. Like when I talk about Illinois, I'm thinking Simeon Rice and Kevin Hardy and that whole crew, right? Because that was the big moment on campus. So using your content to continue those memories and sharing that with your audience is a big deal. It's a way to keep your audience connected, your alumni connected with your school. Alex, talk a little bit about that. I thought that was interesting, that's a goal, is to keep connected with the young alum.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we're doing right now that kind of hits right on your example there is we're doing a 1990s all-decade team for Air Force football. Not an official all-decade team, but something that fans can engage with, especially those players who are on the ballot, if you will, for that. So that's something we're doing this off season where content's a little slow right now. Along those same lines, again, this is a football example, but anybody that plays on the Air Force football team is part of the Bolt Brotherhood, is what we call it. And so, we're doing updates on where those people are right now in the Air Force or in industry, while also looking back and highlighting their football accomplishments. So, yeah, to Marcia's point, I mean, there's tons of stuff just kind of in the archives that, where I think sometimes we can get focused on everything that's happening this athletic year and really get wrapped up in, highlighting those games and those seasons. The off season especially is a great time to tap into the historical archives and highlight some of those great people. And that's a great way to stay engaged with them and help our fundraising team as well.
It's the return on investment. A lot of times when we talk to schools and they're not aware of certain, the level of AI that's there with semantic search and scene detection and OCR and brand recognition and personality, right? Facial recognition with celebrities, et cetera. So, you know, if you have 100 years of content and you spend the money now or spend the level of effort now to get all that stuff tagged, it's going to continue to evolve like that. There's value in your content for 100 years and will continue to be, right? So it's an amazing time right now to where if you do it right and you get your archives into the right ML engines, which we do provide, you can use semantic search. So I can say, give me all of the clips of Tom Brady against Illinois, right? And be able to pull that stuff out in an easy way. So you're really now starting to empower your storytellers versus just your social media teams, right? Like it's not, I've got to grab this clip and I've got to post it out to social so that everybody engages, which is important, but it's really about like, how do I grab my content and use that to keep my audience engaged when we're not in season, when we're not in a game, when it's an off week, right? Or we're between playoffs, things like that. So archives are a super, super powerful thing. And they're a way to build these experiences for your fans, right? And Marcia, you talked a little bit about this as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the ability to grab from different buckets of content, data, and storytelling, it's going to get so powerful with AI and all the editing software that it's going to be really fun for the universities to then just sell behind it, but then also use it as an engagement tool.
And we talked about the sponsorships, right? Like to where you can, it's a new way to kind of bring in your sponsors and engage them and be able to drive new revenues for your college, right? Because there's, you know, you've got all this archive, right? And the fans want unlimited content. They want access to everything they can get their hands on. And sponsors want those eyeballs, right? Like they want that opportunity. So you can create programs to where you're using archive material and you can upsell your existing sponsors to sponsor different things like you, Alex, talk about with the, you know, the 90s decade team and things like that. There's amazing things to do there. And then there's other things that I have yet to see, but the capability is available now. And that's like OTT networks for specific colleges, right? So where you can have individual experiences in an OTT platform that's just Air Force or that's just Stanford or that's just Illinois, to be able to say, here's your condensed games, here's your highlights, understanding who your consumer is so they get highlights from the 90s or from the 60s, right? And be able to build those experiences. And then brands will want to be part of that because that's how we do it. And Gregg, you did some digging and we talked a little bit about the OTT and streaming and fast channels and the growth of that area.
Right. And I'm relatively new to the space. I had seen these channels pop up on my, you know, smart televisions or, you know, my Roku and things like that, but I never really understood the power behind them. And as I went to an event last week and, you know, just speaking to my friends that have been in the fast channel AVOD space, they've been, you know, showing me how that can get really localized. So when you think about college sports, when you think about how they may have their smaller colleges or not even, you know, that small, it's just that they won't be able to get access to the same access that, say, the professional teams will have, is that fast channels, free ad-supported streaming television for everyone out there, it's basically those channels where you see the programming, it's linear. So, you know, you're seeing the shows being played, you're seeing the sports programs being played. And what you can do with these fast channels is get, you know, right down to your local, you know, neighborhoods. So you're targeting the people right in your neighborhood, and the local businesses are able to advertise on that programming. So we were talking about the benefits, and you think about, okay, well, now I'm at a college and I'm not going to be able to find it on the bigger networks, but you know, these localized fast channels are airing the games, or maybe as a college student, I just can't afford paying for subscriptions, even if it were available. So, you know, we're all looking for, you know, a better deal. We're looking for, wow, free programming that's also good and it's localized and the local businesses can take advantage of it. And maybe it's directing those local audiences back to your merchandise as a college. Or maybe your local college is going to be able to create their own fast channel so that they can take advantage of ad revenue.
Yeah.
And the
Marcia, you
content.
look like you're ready to jump in. You see a lot
Well,
happening.
yeah, well, I mean, I love where this is going, and I think anytime you empower, tell your own story. What I like get really excited for colleges is if I think about Saturday mornings, I'm in Brooklyn, of the English Premier shorts. It's gotten my son completely hooked because he can do the 10 minutes. And you think about the ability of colleges, who I would want my daughter to watch the highlights of the women's soccer, the women's golf highlights. We can't sit down for the 3 hours of the golf championships, but you sit her down, she sees the highlights for 10 minutes and she's like falling in love with these athletes and this story. And it's a good habit you can teach you can create the appointment for everybody in your fan base to show up, see the 10-minute recap. And it's something that they can really get invested in. And it's easy for you to just, slowly build that habit in of the recap on Sunday morning or whatever recap date for whatever teams, or like a summary of all your teams, all your fall sports. But you're creating this, cadence and this new data point and this new ad opportunity where you're again regaining that relationship in a way that's really meaningful for the fans and the parents and like you're saying, even the students, like they don't want to watch the whole game. They're not going to go to all the games, but you're getting them hooked so then you can upsell them the big game.
Right. Yeah.
If I can add something, Daniel, is going back to our point, what you were mentioning, Marcia, or with Magnifi, is that we need help. As content creators need help, or our athletic directors need help creating that additional content, creating those cut down reels, those very specific highlight reels or not highlight reels, but the reels that are taking archival content for a targeted audience. Like all that is work.
Right.
Content is challenging, as we all know. Production is that bottleneck, and if we can use AI, and I know that there's some apprehension with AI that it's going to take our jobs and it's taking away creativity. I think just the opposite. I think as we already mentioned, that no, it's allowing us to enhance the process. It's giving us more freedom to be more creative. It is automatically logging, finding these highlight clips for us, and it's able so that we can create content more fluidly. And by doing this, we're giving more value back to our guests.
My saying is always AI is a tool, not talent. And I think that's true, right? I think it's, I think you're right. I think it expands the horizon. It allows us to do more. One of the things that we're working on right now is really empowering storytellers, because what we want you to be able to do is we don't want you to think about how do I put these packages together. We want you to think about what packages you're going to put together. And to Marcia's point about appointment, setting the timer, 10 a.m., I know I'm going to get this stuff. So our big push over this last year has been to do rules-based storytelling, right? So you can come in and you can say, at the end of each game, I need a 7-clip cut down of the best moments for the home team, the away team, and then a neutral. I need clips for this individual player. I need clips for this individual position, right? To be able to do all those things. And so we've been working on that to where you have this rules engine so that you're kind of pre-setting your appointments, right? Marcia is like, okay, this is our content window. This is where we're going to go. And, at the end of each game, 45 minutes later, we're going to do a condensed version of the game. Saturday morning, we're going to drop our best highlights of the week. We're going to drop our player of the game. And the beauty of that is when you have these rules-based, the rules are looking at it, and then it's not so overwhelming if you want to put human eyes on it before it goes out the door. Like you can do that. You can say, okay, Saturday morning, 9 a.m., I'm going to make sure that package looks good. I'm going to send it out. So we take the burden off of you to where you're not just like, oh my gosh, I got 1,500 clips from this week. Like, how do I boil that down to the best plays of the week? Like, that's overwhelming. But that's where AI can really enable you to just like, let's preset all of our packages. This is kind of our content flow for the week. We're going to set our rules. Magnifi is going to surface that up, and then we're just going to review it before it goes out the door. And the nice thing about that is if you start to build those rules and build those packages, you can sell those to sponsors. You know, sponsors can come in and say, okay, I want to do this. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is if you have, you know, along those same lines of those packages, if you bring it into like an OTT environment, which I just wanted to finish a point that I forgot to mention earlier, is the level of tracking in that is at the point where you can see exactly who watched, how much, how long, and be able to mold your content to really speak to them. So if you know that they're on there and they're fast forwarding to just the plays, okay, well, they need a cut down, or they're just looking at defensive plays. Okay, that's their thing. So let's make sure we surface more highlights around that. It can be your portal to connect to alumni, right? Like you can set that up to where, you know, it's like I have a specific login and this OTT platform is just for our alumni or just for our players or just for our sponsors. So it can kind of play on the foundation side, right? Like the fundraising side as much as on the entertainment side. I just think if colleges and universities start to think about their archive as gold, right? And how we connect with our fan base through those archives is something we can control. We can set on a narrative path, and we get that consistent schedule. To Marcia's point, like she can now make sure her daughter is ready at 10 o'clock. We're going to get the best highlights from our favorite schools at 10 a.m. And that's what we're going to do where we have breakfast or whatever we're doing.
Yeah. And knowing that a lot of ADs watch this, I would say the biggest thing to focus there is bringing together your sponsorship team and your marketing team, because they actually need to be in lockstep of what are we going to go try to sell, and letting maybe the brand sponsorship drive that plan and that role base, which you can then automate, but it allows you to really budget and like thrive rather than react. And so you can have this whole plan of the historic, everything's pre-sold. And so now you have, you know, a whole plan for the year. And they're actually aligned with each other versus being too siloed, is the biggest thing I see with content.
100%. And then you can be reactionary, right? Because you've got your set, and then something culturally significant happens and you want to take advantage of it with your content. Your team is freed up to do that. They're freed up to focus on a longer form storytelling, right? Or they want to do a player feature. The content of what we call feeding the beast, right? Like making sure that we get their daily diet of that is all set. So now you're empowering your storytellers to do that, to tell really good stories. Greg, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, and you need you need that tool like Magnifi, right? You need AI to help you with that content. And as you're speaking about the features of your platform and just AI in general and how it's helping the content process, is okay, the cost savings, right? And I know, you know, we're not talking, you know, we're trying not to talk about replacing anyone, but excuse me, but we're saving on the time, we're saving on, yeah, maybe the personnel, but we're creating more content, which is our products, and that you're saying that we're sending directly to the alumni, sending it directly to donors, and feeding the beast of, you know, you don't want to think of it like a grind, but it is, you know, and those of us that have been in production, is that you're putting in all these hours, you know, everything's subjective, so there's a lot of, you know, back and forth. So if you can eliminate some of those layers to at least get you to a baseline of where then you can start adding the creativity, you can start having the feedback, that takes hours and hours away. And the thought that we are having additional platforms that we can monetize this content, that's even better. That it's not just the simple process of giving the information out, right? Allowing people to watch their favorite team. No, it's fantastic, right? But to be able to create these other pockets of products and revenue possibilities is just unprecedented.
Yeah, and there's data supported, right? But it's not just like pie in the sky, let's do this. I think, you know, Alex, we saw this year inside the Mountain West to where men's basketball posting condensed games and doing shorts on YouTube, they were seeing a 600% growth year over year in viewership and followers. Like the growth is there because the younger generation that comes up, and even my generation, like I don't remember the last time I watched a full game. Like I watch highlights or I watch chunks of games because, you know, people are busy. But the metrics on engagement are there.
100%. And for us, you know, I think on the user side in college athletics, I don't think a school like Magnifi is definitely not taking anybody's jobs because we have 27 sports and we don't have the bandwidth all the time to cover everybody the way we want to.
Right.
So Magnifi has been huge for us, with the ability to say, I'm going to focus on X during the game. I don't have to necessarily be manually, you know, clipping those highlights as we go. I can pop in, it'll give me, you know, first half highlights, second half highlights, all the touchdowns, a full game recap. And that's been phenomenal especially for some of our smaller sports where we just don't have as many hands in the kitchen for those games day in, day out. Road games, it's been great for us, where we don't necessarily have somebody traveling with, you know, our baseball team to Mountain West tournament. We were able to take those packages already produced. So, I mean, literally no lift at that point. Put them on our website, put them on our YouTube, share them to social media, all those different things. And some of that stuff just wouldn't have been possible in the past, or it would have, you know, taken a lot more man hours that we're then able to divert to other projects and priorities. So, no, it's been a game changer for us. I think, you know, everybody in our space was really used to the free Twitter live cut option that went away about a year ago. And so, you know, when we were evaluating options, you know, full transparency, I didn't even know some of these, you know, cool toys existed. So it was really cool to kind of delve into that. And yeah, shout out to Mountain West for coming together with that deal at the conference level and providing a new resource that I think has been super beneficial for us. And kind of circle back too on that corporate piece, just add a user tidbit to that. I mean, you know, she's 100% right. Hey, got to be in lockstep. And so what we've done is, you know, really run the numbers on all of our different kind of campaigns and pieces that we'll do for different sports. And then we provide that list and those metrics to our sponsorship team and say, hey, go sell this stuff first. And also here's how many eyeballs you could promise somebody, give or take, over the last 5 years for this particular piece or pieces like it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's but you know, whether people realize or not, you're a global brand at this point. You know, you don't, especially you in particular in the Air Force, because you've got people deployed that have that connection back. But just every brand, right? Stanford's a global brand, Illinois is a global brand, right? Like your tuition, people that are coming in to go to school there, like that's, you know, your ultimate audience. So you need to think about that. And then I also like Marcia's the daughter comment has really stuck with me because as a parent, right? And a lot of the time over the last 20 years, like women's sports and smaller sports didn't get the same attention that the guys in basketball and football, right? They got all that attention. And if you think about the young girls that are growing up now, like seeing that content, it's universities, you have this content and people may connect to it in ways you're not even thinking about. So make sure that you feed those fans and get that out there because you don't know what little girl's going to see that and want to become an athlete because of it and want to grow up and see that. So I think it's almost somewhat like you need to do it because it's good for our human race, right? To just show that out there. So
Yeah. If you want to bring it back to the money, it's also really good for donor relations. You know, you got to like give them lots of updates before you ask for money. And I think sometimes doing that at scale has been hard, but I think that, you know, oh, I can't do that has been like wiped away with tools like this, where you can almost have sport packages and things just for big donors, and you can really cultivate that relationship with a small development team that most athletic departments have. And so actually giving them these tools as well and saying, hey, use this for donor relationships should actually really help when you do have your annual campaigns.
yeah, and I just, you know, we're talking a lot, and I think maybe some people in the audience, you know, are D2, D3, and they're thinking, well, I don't have the resources or the manpower to do all this. Like, how do I get started with all of this stuff? It understood, heard, right? Like we know that your programs are not at the same level. Not every program is at the same level, but your audience and your community, the more you can build, you're building a content pipeline, building an audience, building fan and community. your content is the driver there. So if you're going to invest in that space, because it will pay dividends long term. Your archive is important to the individual fans and also to connect them to those timelines, right? Their history. So it's not as difficult as you might think. It's not as costly as you might think to get involved. And there are opportunities to actually drive new revenue sources with the technology where it is today, and including sponsorships, being able to pair across your conference or groups of schools and be able to aggregate those eyeballs, let's say, right? And be able to sell ads into or sponsorships into Tom's, auto shop or, the local diner and stuff like that. Capability is available now. So don't be afraid to step in and look at these opportunities. Call Marcia and talk to her, or call me, talk to us. Like, we will help you. We're here to try to help your program because we see the future, and you need to connect to your fans via content. Yeah. So with that, we're about 15 minutes in. We don't have, I have one more question here. Oh, John would like Alex to talk a little bit about pedestal scanners at your venue. If you could give a little more detail about those.
Yeah, sure. So we're partners with Paciolan. I think, each ticket service provider is going to probably have a different solution, but I think the easiest way to imagine it is it's a black stand. I'm 6'4". It probably comes up to my chest, maybe 4 foot tall or so. It literally needs power, and then I could be standing right here and have 3 of those going simultaneously, maybe more. I don't know how many we'll end up doing per person, and managing those. So instead of just being tied down with my one scanner scanning as we go, I'm kind of like someone who's at Kroger managing the self checkout. You got one person managing 6 checkout lanes. Very similar. Obviously, we're always going to have fans that are challenged and unable to maybe pull stuff up, so they're still there to troubleshoot with that. But people can literally just walk in, scan their tickets. I see the light turns green, and they can come on in. So it's a new thing for us relatively. We just made this investment with the new build on the east side. We also previously were using all handheld scanners, and we're still going to have those at some gates because they are cheaper. But yeah, excited to see how this will go, because again, just kind of reducing either that operational expense or being able to divert those people to other places, or maybe we need more assistance from our event services personnel.
Okay, amazing. So a few more questions coming in. So apologize, I'm reading over time. But Air Force does such a great job with their content in general, but especially with integrating cadet live storytelling and the military to resonate with their audience. What is their method to blending content to ensure a segment of their audience isn't forgotten? Great question.
Yeah, definitely a couple layers to that. So I think it's about, for us, when we kind of take a look at it, it's what differentiates us in the marketplace. Right up the road, you can go watch a football game at CSU. You can watch a football game at Air Force. What's different about that experience? I mean, we could get into the cool stuff like, F-22 flyovers and parachute jumpers every single game, and that is pretty neat. But the whole cadet, the fact that they're cadet athletes and not student athletes, I think kind of already gives away just how different their life is. People joke about the graphic that comes up on CBS Sports every time we play, where it's the cadet life, and it's like starts at 6 a.m. with formation, ends at midnight when they wrap up homework. So people are like, when do these kids sleep? I don't know when they sleep, but yeah, it's a priority with all of our content. I think it's something where we still, when we just had a brainstorm yesterday on some of our summer content stuff we want to do, and that's always a piece because it resonates with all of our alumni, because everybody who went through that cadet life, even if they weren't an athlete. Our fans love it. It's a big reason that maybe you're in our market and you support us despite having no military affiliation. People want to get behind that. So yeah, I think it's just about, at the end of the day, we only have, going back to resources, so many people that can create content on our team. Really is great for the sports piece of it, but we want to take people behind the scenes. We want to show you stuff that maybe the public doesn't have access to because our campus is so locked down. Any other campus, you could just walk into the library probably and stumble in there. Can't do that here. There's a bunch of security guards everywhere and fences. So yeah, again, it's just prioritizing and figuring out what's the most important content piece.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to our earlier topics that where, the AI and these advanced technologies kind of free you up to be a better storyteller, right? It's like this kind of the daily scheduled, programmatic, or I guess thematic, right? Like we know this stuff is going to come out because we know the fans want the recap and the condensed games and all of the stuff. Like that stuff's taken care of, so we can use our storytellers to tell wider, deeper stories. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I'll add, just to put you on top of that, is the cadet life and the military aspect. There's no wins and losses really. So I mean, we just did a long format piece on one of our tennis teams who won one game this year. You wouldn't know that watching the piece. So we leaned into everything else: cadet life, military, all the things they're balancing, what they want to do when they leave here, how they've developed as leaders, and things like that. And again, watching that piece, since we didn't have any wins to celebrate, you wouldn't know that because of how we focused our efforts and developed that piece.
Yeah, that's amazing. One thing to just go back to this question too is how do you go deeper and wider? Marcia, you and I were talking a little bit before we started this about the generation of students that you have coming into your schools have grown up as content creators. They've lived their life out loud on these platforms, and so going to your students and bringing them into the program to be part of this. You want to talk a little bit about like how we can get access to these kids and let them build content?
Yeah, I mean, if it like the cheat sheet that I think is like leading the way in this is if you look at overtime, they employ Overtime Joe or Overtime whatever, and they basically give, them the access to content and then put commentary over it. But then they have this, very organic, natural. They have all these different commentators, not at the high national level, but these little micro influencer levels, which is great. You have these students that want to get involved and want to be in this space and know it, where you can now actually like amplify everything by just giving them access to the highlights, or bringing them in the fold of here's a platform to try out. But I think there's a lot of creative ways to outsource it to the community but still have it a little bit controlled, because they're doing it all already, but it's almost kind of like you're now part of it with them. And then it just really allows you to like bring in more sponsors and, extend your reach using stuff like content you've already created.
Yeah, and I think that, the technology is there now to where you can have security and permissions, and you can lock down your content to where you can only have approved sources, and you can make sure that you check these things. And the nice thing about the Magnifi platform is that you can actually build your content, so you could invite students in to say, build the best sizzle reel for the game, and here's all your content, here's your logos and graphics. And then that can be locked down inside to where they can't share it outside the platform until it's ready to go, right? And so you can kind of bring these creators into your program and makes them feel part of it. And then you could run a contest on social to where you get people to sign up and, give us your best campus, shots, and then they win a chance to be in the room to build the reels, right? So there's all kinds of interesting things like that. So a quick question was, how do we non-Power 4 conferences, how do they engage with Magnifi? Just pick up the phone, give us a call, reach out. We're happy to do a demo. Really, to get started, all we need is an SRT feed or just access to your content. Same thing with your archive. We'll ingest it, tag it, do all that fun stuff to make it valuable for you. It's pretty simple. And also, Jerry, Ian, and I will be at the NACDA conference in June. So we'd love for you to come by. We'll show you a new fancy UI that's pretty slick, pretty easy to use. So want to thank everybody for coming. It's a little bit early, so I'm going to give everybody a chance to just wrap up their thoughts. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for your time. If you do have any other questions, feel free to throw it in there. We'll have a minute or two. I'm going to go to Gregg, and then we'll go to Marcia and Alex.
And this is just final thoughts.
Yeah. Just final wrap up.
One thing I wanted to mention, just going back to the Wi-Fi and listening to Alex and Marcia talking about, the fundraising team and the donors and having these sensors as you're walking in, or these scanners as you're walking into the stadium, is that now the fundraisers are able to go and just give a simple hello to, the donors once they get to their seats, and or get them over to maybe a conference center to give them a special presentation. And you know, it's all about engagement, and you know, there's the guest engagement, to get them to the concession stands, to get them to, you know, the shorter bathroom lines, but to then add that next level of service, add that little touch, and all they're saying is that they're being greeted as soon as, you know, they're sitting at their seat. They're being treated like a VIP, which they are. And they're not even thinking about the technology in the background. And that's what's fantastic about all these sensors and all these, you know, all these technologies that are being integrated, is that we're trying to make a transparent, pleasant experience, you know, and that's what I think is really wonderful, is that, yeah, we want to protect everyone's data, use it, you know, when necessary, use it when it's applicable, but when it is giving them this enhanced experience, then I think that's what's really fun, seeing this early development in the college space, college sports space.
Great. Marcia.
Yeah, I would just echo what Greg just said, is like leaning into personalization, I think is going to be the future. And you know, technology kind of realizing it's in a part of every experience we do, whether we're filming it or taking a picture of it. And so in real ways you can integrate it during the game, after the game, highlights, and bring them back into the digital experience to hands and offline is like going to be a big win for like wherever you're taking your organization, because they want it, they're used to it. And so it's, you know, time to just look at that is a big part of any strategy.
And so, Marcia, just since you're in the space, you give everybody a quick, like, how did they work with you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, obviously, I think you have my contact information. I'm Caporn at thisisaura.com. But how we work is we will work with all of the vendors, plug them into a platform for you guys, and we actually work with you to find the sponsorship to cover our costs, because we're so confident and betting on ourselves of creating contextual, at least in stadium experiences, where from highlights after the game to polls to helping you navigate stadiums, that we're very confident we can onboard your fans and then, you know, drive POS and, you know, engagement across the platform, that it's a win-win for all of us.
Amazing. Alex.
I think those are both great thoughts. So tough to follow, but the only thing I would say is, you know, with college athletics and budgets varying so much, I think all of this stuff is scalable. So really, at the end of the day, it's just figuring out what makes sense for you and your budget. I mean, there's a million things out there. You could spend, you know, $1 million on a bunch of fancy toys. But I think there's also still enough kind of open source, free or relatively low cost things out there. I mean, get on Google, use Gemini, have some fun with that. I know our graphic designers do some of the generative AI stuff. Adobe's got some really cool stuff coming out, and that's, you know, Photoshop. I'm sure everybody's designers are using that. So I think, you know, it could be something as simple as, and I know they're working on it. Tennis rackets are the bane of, I think, any graphic designer's existence when it comes to cutting those out with all the little intricacies of that. And, you know, I'm excited for the day when, you know, some of this AI stuff from a productivity enablement standpoint is able to, you know, do that with the snap of a finger to the level that, you know, a high-end graphic designer would expect. So yeah, just remember it's all scalable, and there's a space for you, I think, in this new, you know, kind of emerging technology era.
Yeah, like don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to explore. Like, the data's out there. Like, ideas are important. Like, connecting with your fans is ultimately what you are. You are a content aggregator. Like, as a business, that's what you are. Your content is your product. Your players are the thing that's important, right? But your content is your product. So think about how you engage, you know, your games with your fans, with your audiences. It's important, and it means a lot to them. So make sure you live up to that. Anyway, thank you all so much for making it. The hour went by really fast. I could talk about this stuff for days, and I will at NACDA. So everybody come and join us, stop by the booth, say hello. Alex will come hang out and tell you some secret cadet stuff. And no, he won't. He'll be in trouble after this call. But anyway, thank you all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.